There is also another model where you say, I'm not willing to go through the pain of watching 5 adverts for me to access 4 episodes of content. So can I pay a premium? So we can adopt varying ways to price and to make sure that we are sustainable as businesses without necessarily losing customers or putting the burden on them. But for those that are willing, they are able to still pay for us to give them access premiumly, and then they can access the content. So I don't think that there is a one-size-fits-all in terms of pricing for the platforms. We need to adopt as many varying options as possible for us to be able to reach as many customers as possible. And then, of course, what that will do is we'll get 30% more users on ad-supported tiers. I usually talk to the people here at Next and in several rooms where I go, and I ask, how many of you are subscribed to YouTube Premium? And it will shock you that out of a room of 200 people, you'll get only 10 hands up. So it means that very many people actually want to access content for free, and the cost has been such a barrier for us. So if we adopt these several ways of bringing access with the bills being paid and retaining customers, then we grow our numbers. Then 4, teleco and payment partnerships. Now this is a very interesting conversation that happens on all the platforms where I go. Teleco and OTT platform partnerships. It is interesting that currently most of the telecos are trying to get into the space for content creation. So they are trying to design content creation hubs in their spaces to be part of the telecos. And the content creators are arguing and saying, you're experts for voice and data. Why don't you leave us to do the content which we are very well known to do? And then you do what you're doing, and then we collaborate, because we are in an age for collaboration. But that's a discussion for another day. But I think there is a big opportunity there. How do we partner with telecos to bring cheaper data bundles beyond the direct subscription, which I spoke about earlier, through freemium and premium models? How do we create data bundles with the telecos? Locally here in Uganda, we have MTN, we have Airtel, and a couple of others. How do we work with them to create more affordable, easier to access bundles for people to be able to reach us on the OTT platforms, and then do a rev share, and it's a win-win situation for all of us. You're selling data, we are giving you a reason to sell data, because nobody buys data just for the sake of buying data to fill up their phone, that I bought data and I'm happy. You must have a reason why you're buying that data, which is to consume it. So why don't we have more partnerships, more collaborations with those people, the telecos and the content creators in the room, to make sure that we narrow the gap of data accessibility and affordability further, and that for us, the content creators, we have a bigger vehicle to transmit this content to our audiences. And then, of course, that will help us with zero-rated data and mobile money integrations, which I think is the biggest win for the telecos once they partner with us. And of course, eventually we will see a 70% growth, according to the research that we have there, of teleco OTT tie-ups and driving subscriber growth eventually. So how do we unlock these revenue streams? I think I've spoken to most of it in the slide before, but I'll still just try and go over it now. Targeted advertising. We need to make sure that the adverts that, and I think YouTube does that pretty well, the adverts that they send you when you're not paid up for premium are adverts that actually speak to you as a person. So how do we work with our engines to make sure that when we have advertisers that are paying for our freemium models, these adverts are actually really targeted to speak to the people on the platforms that they intend to target? Because I'm a believer that OTT platforms, in one way or the other, are sort of a mass market product. Anybody can access. You just have to give them a reason to access. The A, B, C, and D should be able to find a reason to come to the platform. If the A and B are coming for business related content, for political current affairs shows, there is a D who is coming for local drama in a local language and in a local setting. There is also a B that is looking for a high-end drama produced to cater to their need. So how do we then work with with the advertisers and target those particular portions of audiences on the platforms to make sure that they speak directly to the people that they intend to target and have value across the board. Then 2, tiered subscription, which I spoke about earlier, ad-supported, and then the which is basic, anybody can access, but somebody is paying the bills and you have to go through the pain of watching the adverts for you to access, and then the premium, which is ad-free. There is another opportunity, which is content export and licensing. Now, I think this is an area where, as Africa, we need to explore better and work together to grow. Many other markets are exporting content to Africa. We have had a whole frenzy of telenovelas and so many things coming to the continent. But how are we able to relicense things that we produce here to other markets? And I think the Nigerians and South Africans are doing very, very well in that space, but there is still a very big gap for the rest of the continent. There is opportunity there because return on investment may not necessarily be possible in the markets of launch for products. We may recover a bit of the investment, but how do we recover much more and make profit? Relicensing and distribution is an opportunity. And when you look at the numbers there, Nollywood exports over $1 billion US dollars biannually to at least 30 countries world over. So there is an opportunity. How do we carry the content that we produce exclusively for these platforms and redistribute it in other markets? But the question to answer there then is, how do we produce content that is quality and adaptable to those markets and that speaks to their needs? Then 4, bundled services, again, which I spoke about, the partnerships between telecos and OTT platform owners. Bundled services, data and access. Buy a bundle, get to watch for 2 or 3 days. And one thing that I forgot to talk about in the tiered model for monetization and commercialization is the ability for us to understand that not everybody is willing to pay for a monthly subscription currently because we are growing a trend for consumption. We are trying to grow the markets into appreciating local platforms and local content. And like I said earlier, the appetite is there, we are growing, but it's a long game. So how do we get these people to even subscribe for at least a program a day? I'm not willing to pay for a month, but there is a particular show on Thursday, on Wednesday, on Monday that I want to watch, and I could pay 1,000 Ugandan shillings as opposed to 20,000 shillings a month. So in my world, it makes sense because I'm spending 4,000 shillings a month as opposed to 20,000, and that's still revenue that you can tap into. If you have 1 million or 1,000 of those people doing that every week, it is still contributing to your basket. So what that does is that you will have 40% uptake with these kinds of models. So pathway to sustainability. What do we do? How, in a nutshell, what am I saying here today? How do we harness this conversation to make sure that we arrive where we hope and intend to go? 1, validate microsegment demand. It is very important that we validate the need for that microsegment demand. There is no one size fits all in terms of the content that we produce. The news broadcast that speaks to the A and B does not necessarily speak to the C and D. How do we segment content on the platforms to speak to varying audiences so that we are products of consumption for everybody? Then 2, roll out flexible pricing, the tiered models. Have people that can access for a day, for an hour, for a month, for a week, have people that can access freemium and premium, and all of that, advertisement within the platforms, and we should be able to make money. Leverage the teleco partnerships, telecos, let's work with the telecos to ensure that we have leverage in terms of the content that we have and in terms of the numbers that I have, in terms of subscription for data. Let's go to the market together. Give them a reason for their data to be subscribed, but also they're giving us reach to the customer through access of data. And then 3, iterate content using analytics. It is very, very critical for us to know that the content that we produce for these platforms is not for ourselves. We need to produce content that is data-driven. We need to run platforms that are data-driven. We need to have real-time insights that inform the decisions that we make on a monthly, on a weekly, and have honest conversations with ourselves on things that are working and are not working. our colleagues in the other markets are doing that. Netflix runs a season for runs a series for 1-2 seasons and it's not working, and they will drop it because the numbers are clear. They're there. So instead of driving individual passions, because I'm very passionate about this pocket of content and it must stay on the platform, but there is no return on investment, there is no consumption for it, there is no justification in terms of data. We need to understand that we are running data-driven platforms and using analytics every day to make decisions. So thank you very, very much.
Oh yes, yes. Would like to say thank you to Kaijja, Chief Content Officer. Maybe we'll allow just one question before we bid you farewell, Kevin. So I will kindly ask for one question to be posed, one quick question, and we'll respond to that because we are a bit short for time, and we know many of you probably have to fly back to destinations. So what question? No question? Well, on that note, Kevin, would like to say thank you once again for your presentation. And I'm sure they are taking in your presentation and should be getting through to you via email or on your various platforms. We should be visiting Uganda soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.